Greetings one and all, and thank you for watching my videos. Some of you are saying my thank you button has disappeared. YouTube demonetized me for being such a naughty girl. So, yeah, you can't pay me anything through YouTube anymore, and I appreciate those that did. Thank you very much for your donations. If you did want to help me in any way, obviously my books are available through my website, and I would love you to buy them and read them, obviously. But I'm not here to sell my wares. I'm here to discuss Gurdjieff. And the reason I'm doing this one is because obviously I've met new people in the Gurdjieff work. I seem to do that every 6-7 months or so. And I feel I have to re-emphasize I am not a teacher. I'm just passing on the information I know. But someone was saying, why can't Gurdjieff be more direct with what he's trying to put across to us? Why can't he put it in simple terms? So I was trying to explain to that person, well, it's all about the pondering and the working within one. And I myself used to struggle with that. Why can't it be easier? Why can't we just be told the answers? But now I realise, obviously older and wiser-ish, that we have to develop ourselves, work towards the answers ourselves, because it creates a different kind of energy. And also when we're told something, we just accept it and go on to the next thing. When you have to discover something for yourself, it stays with you. Gurdjieff used to say, verify everything. But I also happen to find in Views from the Real World this little quote which I wanted to put across. So this is something Gurdjieff was saying. Nothing should be given in a ready-made form. One can only give the idea. One can only guide or even teach indirectly, starting from afar and leading him to the point from something else. I never teach directly, or my pupils would not learn. If I want a pupil to change, I begin from afar or speak to someone else, and so he learns. I'm going to end the quote there, and I find it quite interesting what's at the last sentence about, or I speak to someone else and so he learns. Well, I noticed in a lot of the Paris meetings during the war that Gurdjieff often used to talk to someone in his group, try and help them with, whatever it was they needed. And if they weren't understanding it, he'd then put it across to somebody else. Or sometimes he could tell when someone had a question, but they perhaps didn't have the courage, or maybe they thought it was stupid. I used to not ask questions a lot for fear of being ridiculed, but now I see that's all part of the learning. I used to think there were no stupid questions, but I have learnt over the last few years, yes, there are. Anyway, back to Gurdjieff. So he was perhaps aware that someone had a burning question inside them and couldn't get it out, but someone else had the same question or something like that question, so he would direct the answer to that second person, and that first person would be able to hear and learn from it. I do highly recommend the war talks, the war books, when Gurdjieff was in Paris, though I also noticed, and I myself used to do this, sometimes I would do the exercises he was giving out to other people, and sometimes they worked for me and sometimes they didn't. But of course he was giving certain exercises to certain people because he could see that they needed that. And maybe some of the exercises in them books are not for me at the moment. I'm not at that stage. But it's always good to try something. We don't have Gurdjieff here to tell us what we should and should not be doing. But we do have a lot written down about exercises and ways to do things. I noticed in the Paris talks again, he sometimes gave the students, for the want of a better word, certain medicines he'd created for them. Wouldn't it be fantastic to know what his medical procedures were of making these certain tablets or ointments and such like? It's a shame they weren't passed on to somebody else, but maybe they were mystery school secrets. I was asked once if I was a teacher, or if I was a woman of being. Gurdjieff uses the term man of being quite often during his writings and obviously his groups. And my little ego was going, woohoo, just lie and say, yes, I am. Even though I'm not. Though I'm working towards being a woman of being or a man of being. I find it odd that sometimes people refuse to use the word just man for humanity these days, and we have to keep clarifying everything with the word woman. I used to, for many years, use the word man to cover men and women when I was speaking about them. I did a workshop many years ago on the goddess Sekhmet, I think it was. Do you know, I can't remember. Maybe it wasn't. Anyway, I was talking about God and using God in just that word, not doing any gender as far as I knew, but maybe I did a few times say God, he, or I must have given the impression that I was talking about a male God. When it came to the Q&A at the end of this talk, this woman, I'd seen her throughout. She was close, I think she was in the front seat. She'd been wanting to ask a question from almost the beginning. She was bursting to ask this question, or so I thought, a question. So I let her go first, and straight away she jumped on me of, how dare I assume God was male? How dare I, what was it? Why did I not include the goddess in my talk and such like? And so I then tried to explain it was stupid of me not to say at the beginning that when I used the word God and gods, I'm meaning both male and female gods and goddesses. And obviously in these difficult times of being woke, there's so many genders now. I believe in only the two. But I could see what this woman was saying, and I hadn't been specific before I started the talk that I used the word God and gods covering male and female. And I notice in a lot of reading groups I go to, especially if we do Rudolf Steiner lectures, some people swap the word man for humanity, and I see some more modern translations use the word humanity instead of man now. I don't think they meant back in the olden days, either Gurdjieff or Steiner, man per se as in the male gender. I think it was just the way that humanity was spoken of, using the word man. So I know I catch people out sometimes. Well, no, I don't mean to catch them out, but they're quick on me when I start using just the male gender. I suppose it's just an old-fashioned way of speaking, and I do like how old-fashioned writers used to write. I find some of these modern writers go all round the circles and aren't very clear and concise like language used to be in the olden days. But coming back to being a person of being, who is a person of being? I'm sure many of you know from the Gurdjieff work of the man number 1, man number 2, man number 3, and woman number 1, number 2. I can't be bothered to keep going man and woman, but anyway, so I'm just going to use the word man. Man number 1, man number 2, man number 3. Man number 4 hopefully is us trying to go forward to become man number 5 and work our ways up. And he talks about only one person he ever mentions is man number 8, and that is the Christ. So what is a person of being? A person of being is someone who should be aware that they are alive, be awake, but not necessarily in what we would see in the truthers' circles, but being awake as to who they are and being awake as to what's going on. They're more attuned to the reality. As Gurdjieff says in his last book, life is real only then when I am. It's all about the reality. And of course, being free. Are you free? I'm free. That was a British joke. So we may all be looking for teachers, but to get into this work we must become an initiate. And Gurdjieff says in Beelzebub's Tales, quote, who become initiates thanks to their personal conscious labour and intentional suffering. and who thus acquire in themselves objective merits that are perceptible to other beings of any brain system, and that evoke trust and respect." End quote. So we're back to the conscious labour and intentional sufferings. These are actions we should be working upon. But also trust and respect is very important of other people, and also those that we think are initiated beings. Trust and respect can sometimes be challenged. I myself have met various people over the years who I've seen as teachers, and I put my trust and respect into, and then they perhaps will do something that will knock that a little bit, make me realise that maybe they're not as trustworthy, or I don't need to give them the respect they deserve. But that's because people are humans. I remember one guy who used to come to me for discussing Gurdjieff's work stopped looking at the Gurdjieff work because he suddenly began to disrespect Gurdjieff himself and the lifestyle he led. What Gurdjieff did in his personal life is not important. What is important is the Gurdjieff work, the Gurdjieff system that is put forward for us to try and implicate ourselves into, to put ourselves into, to become a true seeker of truth. We put people on pedestals, and we really shouldn't, because everybody makes mistakes and everybody has their own personal life to lead, and what goes on behind closed doors, unless they're abusing someone in an awful way or abusing animals. Obviously I would never ever continue working with someone that did something like that, because that's like a black magician disguised as a white magician. Really, we need trust and respect in the system that we are following, whatever that may be. Many of us are looking for a teacher to help create conditions for us to work in. And that's why many people are always looking for groups, which are a good thing to work with. A group does provide good conditions to work in, and obviously you get some kind of guidance out of it. But it can be difficult to find a Gurdjieff group near oneself wherever you are living in the world. They are not everywhere, which is thankfully why it's great that we have the books to read, and there are various channels on YouTube or various conferences. We have the All and Everything conference every year that helps us to discuss the books. So that's more of a conference rather than a workshop of any kind. And if you're lucky enough to be able to find a teacher in the movements, that will be great to take part in. The movements are obviously working on all our centres. If we can be doing that, I've found various movements when I have been able to do them and learn them very helpful in my work, because they are, like I say, working on all our centres if we do them properly. I've had a lot of people ask me about how to do exercises for self-remembering. Well, there are clues in various books. One of them is by C.S. Knott, who says, quote, "Remembering yourself is the sum total of concentrations of emotions, that is, of feelings and sensations, the sum total of several functions, feelings which arise in the emotional centre and sensations which arise in the moving centre. Until you can separate that part yourself, you do not understand at all what self-remembering really is." End quote. So I say that's from C.S. Knott, whose books made a big impact on me when I first started doing the Gurdjieff work. The separation of different parts of ourselves I find quite difficult to explain in words. So I'm not very good at passing that kind of information on to people. I just don't know how to put that into words of when it does happen. But I have to really work upon it and concentrate on myself when I'm doing that, noting what my feelings are doing, or what these sensations are that Knott talks about here that are coming up in me. A lot of reflection takes place afterwards. And going back to conscious labour and voluntary suffering, of course this is part of the duties to develop ourselves. I was going to give something from Raj, and I'm just trying to find it, but this is something Gurdjieff talks as part dog duty. We have to work upon ourselves, observing ourselves. And Raj wrote in, I think it was one of the Not books, because I've got it written down here, because it's something I look at quite a lot. Part dog duty. This is duty in 3 languages. It is conscious labour and voluntary suffering. From one aspect, it is an From one aspect, it is an intellectual duty to strive to understand the meaning and aim of existence, an emotional duty to feel the weight of the maintenance of everything existing, and a physical duty to make the planetary body the servant of your aim. End quote. So again, aim. We talk about aim a lot in the Gurdjieff work. We have little aims and big aims. What is your aim? So we are striving to understand the meaning and aim of existence. What is our role in it? Who am I? What am I doing? And how am I being affected emotionally by participating in the Gurdjieff work, in bringing it into my life? Gurdjieff normally advises that we set a time aside each day to do the Gurdjieff work, Gurdjieff exercises. It's very difficult to bring it into your everyday life in the lunatic asylum that's outside there. And in that quote, it talks about that physical duty to make the planetary body the servant of your aim, understanding our body and what it does when we don't want it to do things. But then also, how do we make it work? A lot of times it seems to be doing everything subconsciously or without us knowing it. If we concentrated on trying to walk down the street, it makes it quite difficult to walk down the street. If we concentrate on why we are breathing and how we are breathing, suddenly it becomes rather awkward to breathe. This is that centre working upon us and helping us to just carry on our existence. Meanwhile, we have to look at what our emotional and intellectual centres are doing. Are we just being automatic in our activity in life? Or are we aware of what it is we are doing? These can be good exercises to work upon. We are working towards liberation. And I highly recommend Gurdjieff's 3rd book, Life is Real Only Then When I Am, where he talks a lot with Raj. And he also brings in moral duty. And I wanted to just give this quote here as well from Life is Real Only Then When I Am. I consider it my moral duty here to add, and particularly to underline, that although the said liberation is possible for man, not every man has a chance to attain it. End quote. We're all being given the chance to attain liberation, freedom, by working upon ourselves, by doing the exercises that have been given towards us. We have to remember it's a continually changing, moving system within ourselves, and as we begin to understand one part of it anew, then another part comes along for us to work upon. Sometimes I meditate or ponder upon certain words that Gurdjieff has created, such as part dog duty. You know, the conscious, intentional suffering. It helps to acquire within myself new thought, new feelings, new thinking, new being. And hopefully this is all helping me to coat and perfect myself, as Gurdjieff constantly discusses. We are here to coat and perfect ourselves so that we can become a new man, awakened, a reborn person who goes forth ready for the next stage of our life, and also our next stage after death, and that we don't get caught up in the reincarnation cycle. So though I would love to be a teacher, I am not qualified to be a teacher of the Gurdjieff work. I'm just passing on information to help those that are also struggling with knowing themselves. We would all like to be a student in the fourth way school, and that fourth way school is us doing the work. You know, if you can find a group near you, that's well and good, and that's brilliant. Just don't get caught up with it and do it forever doing the same thing. Use that school to help you move on to your next stage. Be active in the Gurdjieff work. Be active in your life. And may your being develop so that you become an active person in the universe. Thank you for listening, and until next time, peace and out.